Hi, everyone, and welcome to this bonus episode of Drop Dead Serious. I needed to get to the mic, and I'll tell you why. Whenever a document drops in the Idaho quadruple murders, I just am frantic. I'm going all through it, looking for the information that's been withheld from us under a gag order for the last 2.5 years. And today didn't disappoint. More documents dropped in the Idaho massacre. And we're learning a little bit more that you'd call them bad facts if you're Bryan Kohberger, and real bad facts if you're his lawyer. So basically, what we're learning now is all about the K-bar knife, right? We've already learned that search histories showed that Bryan Kohberger had purchased a K-bar knife, sheath, and a sharpener. And he had done that well before the murders, weirdly, well before even moving to Idaho. So if he is the killer, he's like planning this thing before he really even knows who his targets are going to be. And then after the murders, his search history showed that he was looking for what the prosecutors say is a replacement sheath. Because guess what? He left the sheath, if he's the killer, under one of the kids' bodies, and also looked for a replacement knife. Today, we're learning that he also searched how to wipe out your search history. And that's really important, right? I always say it's what you try to hide as much as what you do that can come off real bad to a jury. There's other stuff, too, about the K-bar knife and sheath being shipped to his Pennsylvania family's home, but to his name. That's also in the documents. And a ruling on a lot of these things that the defense has wanted to scrap from the trial. Of course, the defense wants almost everything scrapped from the trial, and they're fighting tooth and nail. But this judge not having a lot of it, basically saying the whole idea that Dylan Mortensen, a surviving roommate who said she saw the figure all draped in black with the mask and the bushy eyebrows walk right past her door, and she froze in a state of shock, right? The defense wanted nothing in the trial about bushy eyebrows and her description, and they lost. Today, we learned that is not going to happen. They are not going to be able to preclude Dylan Mortensen's description of a man with bushy eyebrows, right, walking by. That will come into this trial. And he will be sitting there at the defense table. But I don't know if he'll have his bushy eyebrows. I don't know if he'll trim them again. But we've got photos, right, of what he looked like the morning after, that picture in the bathroom with his bushy eyebrows. So that's happening. And then the whole idea that the defense wanted certain words excluded from the trial, like murder and murderer, that ain't happening either. But you know who's best at analyzing what all of these incredible pieces of evidence and information mean? Jen Coffindaffer. She's a former FBI specialist, and she's amazing at all things Idaho because she has followed this case from start to finish. Jen Coffindaffer, I always turn to you because I don't know if you keep a diary of all of the developments of what happens in Idaho, but every time something happens, it feels earth-shattering to me. Do you think that this recent revelation is earth-shattering, that he tried to potentially cover his tracks if the allegations are true?
I think it's was suspected. In other words, I would have anticipated that. I think he really was smart how he completed this mission of his, actually, Ashleigh. I know he was caught, but at the end of the day, I really believe, but for that DNA leading them toward him, this could still be unsolved.
We might not know. I am always fascinated when the digital forensics turn up Google and search behaviors. And I'm even more fascinated when they turn up evidence of trying to erase those behaviors. Because to me, that is even bigger than a search, is trying to get rid of searches. I don't know. Do you think a jury sees it the same way? Do you think investigators have these eureka moments when they come across things like this?
Well, it's a feeling of, to be quite frank, euphoric almost, because now it's like you have the lie, right? You have the truth of what they did, which is bad enough. And it's like when the child does something bad and then they lie, that makes it even worse. So it's a very euphoric moment for an investigator because it points out really their consciousness of guilt.
So the other thing is, and I always see this with defense attorneys, if they're worth their weight in salt, and I could see Ann Taylor going this way already with the awful facts of purchasing a K-bar knife, purchasing a sheath, purchasing a sharpener, and then after the murders, searching for a replacement. They called it a replacement knife and sheath. I could see Ann Taylor going towards the defense of, yes, but you don't know who was searching, because there were plenty of people using that Amazon account in the house in Pennsylvania where the Kohbergers lived. But now you have this added nugget. Well, then which one was trying to hide it?
Yeah, exactly so. And her argument, if she takes this route, will fall so flat. And this is why. They're going to have the credit card information that is probably, I believe, from what they're saying, going to line up with Bryan Kohberger. They're also going to have specific keystrokes that are likely specifically from his computer, not from the mother's computer or anybody else's computer. And when you put it all together, it's going to point toward Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah, those are, I remember long ago in the advent, like, because I've been around forever, right? 38 years now. But I remember in the early days when the first thing out of a defense attorney's mouth would be, you don't know who was doing the typing. And it was a very strong argument. And oftentimes it was the argument that cleared a lot of people. Nobody knows who, in Casey Anthony, who was the one searching chloroform. They said it could have been anybody in her house. So I know that that's very strong, but lately it's getting less and less strong just with patterning, right? The pattern of when you were online, what you were doing right beforehand. Were you searching your email and then suddenly searching, for a K-bar knife? That gives you an indication that it maybe wasn't mom, searching for a K-bar. But I always find it fascinating when there is an attempt, like in OJ, to throw everything at this jury. It's almost like flooding the zone so that they got a million crappy things, but it's a million of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. You're right. I mean, the defense doing that is throwing mud up against the wall over and over again. We as consumers watch this every time I see Ann Taylor coming in, and it just is detracting from the decent points she makes. And I don't think that will be lost on a jury. I believe in juries.
I mean, I do too. But I've been deflated so often. Like OJ was my big first massive deflation. And it really set me on a course to watch so carefully how these defense attorneys are making what sound like foolish arguments to us, people who are steeped in this business, but can be clutter. They can be clutter to juries to hear all this stuff. And in this respect, let's just go on to another thing that came out today. And that is that, Ann Taylor was fighting to preclude Dylan Mortensen's description of bushy eyebrows. For Christ's sake, you get an eyewitness to a potential murderer walking past your door, and you're trying to preclude anything that eyewitness says. Like, what are the odds anything would get precluded from an eyewitness to the killer?
They're not good, Ashleigh, in preach, because this nugget about these eyebrows has always been so important. His eyebrows are so bushy, and we saw them trim them all up for the court appearances, which is kind of like that lie, that erase. You just can't erase what the reality is. And that new photo of him in front of the shower, that puts those eyebrows on him at that time.
And by the way, can I just say, the creepy, gross feeling that I got when I saw it, and a million thoughts were flooding through my head as I looked at the shower, the time, all the things that went with that photograph. The fact that the prosecutors can get this picture in based on, it's all because we need to talk about bushy eyebrows, not because we want to show a guy who, if he is the killer, was so incredibly proud of his work just hours after doing it.
Yeah, it's so true. That photo's coming in, and it's coming in for that bushy eyebrow description that Dylan came, because the judge ruled it's all coming in.
Yeah, but you know what the jury's going to think, right? Because they're going to say what hour the picture was taken, Look at looks like the shower behind you. It looks like he's in his bathroom. Looks like he's pretty clean. I mean, the jury's going to get the same feeling I did, right? Like, wait, this is only just a couple hours after the murder. Oh my God. This isn't just a picture of his bushy eyebrows. This is a picture potentially of a man who is thrilled with his handiwork.
Absolutely. That's why people take selfies. They want to memorialize an event. They want to memorialize where they're at. He is so proud. And the earbuds, Ashleigh, what is he listening to? I guarantee there's going to be a song that he had that corresponded with those murders and his idea to murder, if indeed he is the one that's guilty.
Oh my God, why do you have to do that? Do you know what? I'm going to take you back to my cub reporter days in Canada. There was this terrible, terrible murder. You probably heard something about it in the U.S. Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka.
Know the case well. I use it in my classes.
Well, it's one of my first cases that I really felt, as a reporter, did start to finish. These private school girls and young teenage girls abducted and raped and kept in the basement, and all these terrible things were happening. And one of the details in that case was that Paul Bernardo was urinating on one of these girls in the bathtub. She was chained up in the bathroom in the basement to one of my favorite songs. And I have never been able to listen to that song again. It's called Little Bones by the Tragically Hip. If you're Canadian, you're probably freaking out right now. If you're American, you're like, who are they? But it really changed it for me. My God, I'm telling you, Kohfendaffer, I get a sick feeling decades later when I hear that song because of that detail. So I'm hoping that it's not going to be what you just said, a song that we all love and know and, now might be associated with this.
Yeah. I think it just may be.
Okay. The other thing is, I thought this was nuts. I couldn't even believe it was being, litigated, but the defense didn't want certain inflammatory words being used during the trial. Okay. Maybe I get psychopath, sociopath, but murderer in a quadruple murder trial?
Hey, listen, Ashleigh, they want everything out. I mean, that's been Ann Taylor's MO. And she, you saw the hearing. She would have 3 different experts to say the exact same thing for the exact same reasons. She is an absolute overkill, no pun intended, in her approach to these cases. But I tell you what the judge ruled that really did bother me in a sense, but I think it's actually going to help the prosecution. They can't use trace DNA. They can't use touch DNA. And you know what? They're going to have to use DNA. And I think that's stronger for them to just say DNA rather than categorize it. But the defense asked for it. The defense got it.
Yeah, you're right. I never thought of it. It's much stronger to say DNA than touch DNA or trace DNA or mitochondrial DNA. But okay, one last thing I want to ask you about, and I'm going back to the knife thing. Apparently, the evidence showed that the knife and the sheath were shipped to Bryan Kohberger at his family address in Pennsylvania. There's a bunch of people who live there, right? And it's out, I think, sort of in the Poconos. So you could say, you could mitigate that, right? By saying, well, they are campers and they're outdoorsmen, and why not have a K-bar knife? But at the same time, what a coinkydink.
Well, the problem is it ended up under Maddie Mogan's massacred body. So,
well, a knife, a sheath. Yeah, not necessarily this sheath, but.
You're right. I have to pull back a little, but the coincidence is far too overwhelming for that to be delivered there, for it to be the right sheath corresponding with the same murder weapon that they believe was used on these 4 and to be found. So I think between that purchase and, of course, the DNA combined with the location of the sheath, to me, it is just overwhelming facts for Bryan Kohberger, even if you erased a lot of the other. And this is the problem for Bryan Kohberger, Ashleigh. There's a lot more.
There's a lot more, which is why you have to come back. The next time a doc drops, will you join me?
I'd love to join you, Ashleigh. I always appreciate being on your show, and I just appreciate you and all you do for true crime.
Oh, thanks, Jennifer. We'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon.
My great thanks to Jennifer Coffindaffer for her insight. And yes, she will be back. And thank you for listening to this bonus episode. I always say make sure you like and subscribe so that you don't miss the bonus episodes. It's real super rando. I drop them when stuff happens, and I definitely want you to get them. So subscribe and you will get them in your inbox right away. I also like to hear from you. If you're watching on YouTube, make a comment for sure. I always want to hear how you feel about this and what you want me to cover more or less of. And if you're listening, definitely give me a comment about what you think. And please remember, I always say this, but it's super important. The truth isn't just serious, it is drop dead serious.